What's up, Green Bay Packers fans? Welcome back. As always, thank you for joining me. My name's Paul Brettel. Packers are coming out of the bye this week, taking on the Chicago Bears. I wanted to focus on the offensive side of the football for Green Bay on a couple of topics. You can also find these in article form over at espnlacrosse.com. But first, before we dive in, hit like on the video, hit subscribe on the YouTube channel. I do greatly appreciate it. Find all my work, like I said, over at espnlacrosse.com, and follow me on Twitter at Paul_Brettel. And for my Wisconsin sports fans out there, Packers, Brewers, Bucks, Badgers, download the 105.5 ESPN Lacrosse app for all your Wisconsin sports radio needs. You can find me on Sports Lead multiple times per week, Monday through Friday, 3 to 6 p.m. Like I said, I wanted to focus on the offensive side of the ball because, that's the side where we've seen a lot of ups and downs, a lot of inconsistency this season. And in the game of football, we know this. It's an incredibly nuanced game. Anytime something goes well, there's so many factors that contributed to that one play, that quarter, that game, whatever it might be, going well. Same thing's true when things are going wrong. There's a number of different factors that go into what has contributed to the boomer bust offense that we've seen from the Green Bay Packers. They can put up points, they can generate big plays with the best teams in football, but it's finding that consistency, that stability is what they're chasing in the second half of the season. Again, there's a lot of factors that have contributed to this, but a big one, big one, is the self-inflicted errors that this Packers team has had throughout the season. That's off-target throws from Love. That can be, obviously, the turnovers, drop passes from the pass catchers, and then penalties. Penalties have been major. And when you take those penalties or the drop passes or off-target throws, whatever it might be, it puts the offense in a hole. And even for an offense that's as dynamic as the Packers, with Jordan Love, again, all the pass catchers that they have, when you're regularly living in long down and distance situations, what the Packers, relatively speaking, have been, again, 2nd and 8, 3rd and 10s, even for the best offenses out there, that's a tough way to live consistently because you're putting yourself at such a disadvantage. When you're in those long down and distance, the defense has the advantage. If it's 3rd and 10, there's only so many routes that can be ran to get you beyond the sticks, right? So the defense has the advantage from a coverage standpoint. They have the advantage along the defensive front because on 2nd and 12, they're not expecting you to run the ball. Most offenses are going to try to get back on track, throw the ball. So defense front's going to pin its ears back. Again, that gives them the advantage. And the Packers have been living in these difficult situations fairly frequently this season. And I think that's really contributed to the overall ups and downs that we've seen. Again, they can generate big plays. They've shown they can put up points, but they've also had a lot of short possessions. And it's because they fall behind the sticks. They go 3 and out, or they maybe 4, 5, 6 plays, whatever it might be, but they've struggled to sustain drives. So it sounds simple to say, clean up the penalties, fix the penalties, catch the ball, but I would say to some degree it's not that simple because these are issues that have been going on for pretty much the entire season up to this point. So when we look at, all right, how do the Packers find that consistency? How do they get back on track? Those are a couple topics we're going to discuss here, but one thing in particular before we fully dive into all those other things is following the Detroit Lions game. We're in the locker room and Sean Ryan is talking about, again, the self-inflicted errors that this Packers team has had. One thing that he said, the messaging was, don't try to do too much. And I hadn't thought about it from that perspective, but there are, instances where you can see this team, these players trying to do too much, right? You fall behind the sticks. You're trying to make that big play to get back on track. You're trying to provide that spark. And it's very, very cliche to say this, but doing your 1/11th, focusing on what your responsibility is, executing it to the highest level as possible, and obviously needing the other 10 guys around you to do the same. That's when a football team, an offense, a defense, whatever it might be, is going to be operating at its highest capacity. So I think that messaging, that focus for the Packers, not trying to do too much and just focusing on, all right, what is my responsibility in this play and how do I go out and do it the best of my ability, I think is going to be a key aspect to, again, getting this offense off the ground, finding that consistency, stability they're searching for. Let's transition to the run game. This is coming out of the bye week, particularly against the Bears. I think that's going to be a really, really important part of the Packers finding that stability, that consistency early on here in the second half of the season. While the Bears have had their obvious ups and downs on the offensive side of the ball, the defense has been quite good this season. They're going to enter this week ranked 4th in pressure rate, according to Pro Football Reference. They've generated 16 turnovers. I believe that's the 6th or 7th most in football. And then the secondary, the back end, opposing quarterbacks' passer rating against this Bears secondary ranks in the bottom 5 in football. So they're strong in coverage and attacking a physical group on the back end. They're generating takeaways. They're getting after the quarterback. Again, it's a recipe to cause fits for opposing offenses, which the Bears have done. Now, other side, where have opposing offenses found success against this Bears team? It's in the run game. We can just look back a week ago when the Bears were taking on the Patriots in that game. Chicago's going to enter Week 11 allowing 4.8 yards per carry. That ranks in the bottom 5 of the NFL. They've given up the 6 most rushes of 10 or more yards this season. So, as we all know, football's not played on paper. These matchups on paper, it certainly isn't always going to be how things actually play out on the football field. But this does look like an area of opportunity for this Packers team in this game. And the Packers have been really effective, really efficient in running the ball this season. Now, there's been games where they've gotten away from it, and we'll touch on that here in a second. But they're averaging 5 yards per carry as a team, ranks top 5 in football. One of the best at, again, generating those chunk runs of 10 or more yards. So it feels like coming out of the bye. Josh Jacobs, Packers run game is something that they can lean on. And when I say lean on, it's a relative term in football. Because, again, you have Jordan Love, you have the pass catchers that Green Bay has, you have Matt LaFleur's play caller. Passing game's always going to be a key component of what the Green Bay Packers game plan is with Jordan Love's under center. So, again, not as if this is going to be they're going to recreate their performance against the Indianapolis Colts, but I think this is going to be a more run-centric game plan because I think that's where the opportunity lies. And there's such a positive trickle-down effect, and not just for the Packers when you get the run game going, but football in general. We talked about the issues offenses run into when they're behind the sticks. Well, if you're ahead of the sticks, now you have the advantage. If you're in 2nd and 4, a 3rd and 2 situation, the entire playbook's opened up to you at that point. You can run the ball, you can pass the ball, you can dump it off, you can go downfield. There's just so much potential, and defense has to be prepared for everything. They have to defend the entire field. There's a bit of, playing on their heels a little bit because they don't know what's coming. So again, it gives the offense the advantage. The run game can get going. It can help the passing game out by putting them in those favorable situations, utilizing play action is another avenue. So I think the run game is going to be key. Again, matchup dictates it, but as we look at, all right, how do we get this offense on track? That's a big reason. That can be a big factor in doing so. Last thing I'll say on this topic, when it comes to getting the run game going, obviously that's easy to say, but it goes back to the penalties. You can't put yourself in bad situations. If you're getting a pre-snap penalty and all of a sudden it's 1st and 15, 2nd and 13, it becomes really difficult to run the ball in those situations. You're trying to get back on track. You're trying to get back ahead of the stick, so that limits your ability to run the ball. Another factor why we've seen the Packers get away from it at times this season is because they fall behind early and by multiple scores. Vikings game and the Lions game. And I know the Bears offense isn't playing at the caliber that those two units are, but in those games, because the Packers fell behind, again, by multiple scores fairly early on, you're left playing catch up, you get more pass heavy. So there's a complementary component to this. Obviously, it's not just come out run, but it's gonna take those other factors. But if the Packers can get off on the right foot, I think that's going to give them the advantage in this game in terms of utilizing Josh Jacobs in the run game. And again, should be a big trickle-down effect to the passing game and the rest of the offense. All right, next topic I want to discuss, Packers red zone performance. And this really goes hand in hand with the run game and really what we just covered. Despite Green Bay, they're top 10 in points per game scored entering this game. Again, one of the best, whether it's on the ground, through the air, at generating big plays. But they've been one of the least effective red zone offenses in football this season. They're ranked 29th in success rate in that part of the field. And again, we look at the reasons for that. Again, a number of reasons, but a lot of it starts with what we've already talked about, penalties. Matt LaFleur said on Friday the Packers have been penalized 18 times this season just in the red zone. And when it comes to red zone success, and LaFleur has talked about this before, the run game is a really, really important component to that. And think about the part of the field that you're in. If you're at the 10-yard line, the 15-yard line, passing the ball just because of where you are in the field innately becomes more challenging. There's just less space to operate in. When you're in a confined space, you can't stretch the field. You can't stretch the defense vertically to help create space elsewhere. It's again a condensed part of the field. There's only so much room for where you can send your offensive players on their routes. There's only so many players for the defense, so many places for the defenders to go. So just naturally, where you are in the field, passing the ball becomes more difficult, and that adds more value to your ability to move the ball in the run game. Because again, if you can get ahead of the sticks, get in those favorable down and distances, you're forcing the defense as much as you can in that part of the field to spread out. You can utilize play action. There's just so much more you can do from a 2nd and 2 versus a 2nd and 12 situation. But because of those penalties, if the Packers are sitting in 1st and 15, again, it minimizes their ability to lean on the run game. So now you're playing catch up, you're in a predictable passing situation, you're in a part of the field where, again, it's naturally just more difficult to move the ball through the air. So that's where a lot of these issues for the Packers in the red zone have come from this season. Again, there's been drops, there's been inaccurate throws, but the penalties are the big one because it takes away their ability to utilize the run game, which again, Matt LaFleur has talked about this on a few occasions before. That's a lot of that. That's a big part of where your red zone success comes from. And across from the Packers in this week's game is going to be the Chicago Bears, who are the number 1 red zone defense in football this season. So the Packers' ability to get down there into that part of the field is obviously important. But what do they do when they're there? Big difference between leaving with multiple touchdowns versus multiple field goals. Multiple field goals, and the opposing offense can make that up in one drive with a touchdown of their own. So how the Packers perform down there is going to be key. And like I said, Josh Jacobs is going to be a big part of that. But the Packers' ability to be fundamentally sound, to eliminate the penalties, to be 100% locked in so there isn't a false start or there isn't a delay of game or anything like that is obviously going to be important. And then once the ball snapped, if there's a holding penalty, you put that in the bucket of the fundamentals, the technique. Why were you in a position to where you had to hold, right? What led to you getting there? So those are going to be really, really important factors to the Packers having success. Eliminate the penalties. Again, lean on the run game. Last thing we'll touch on today is play action. The play action component's a really, really important element of the LaFleur offense. But the Packers, again, Jordan Love, they haven't been nearly as effective this season as they were last year on that. According to Pro Football Reference, Jordan Love's completion rate off of play action is actually 3.5% lower than his total completion rate this season. That ranks 38th out of 41 eligible quarterbacks. Play action is supposed to make things easier, right? You get you have the run action component of it. The defense is off balance, off guard a little bit. It's supposed to set up easier completions. You're supposed to see quarterbacks' completion percentage take a pretty big jump upwards from what it normally is, and Packers have gone the opposite direction. In addition to that, their utilization of it has gone down as well. Jordan Love ranked 11th in play action drop back rate in 2023. He ranks 28th currently, and we're going to take a brief tangent here because Jordan Love's health has obviously been a factor in the Packers' ability to utilize play action. With the MCL sprain, the groin injury, it's impacted his ability to line up under center, where again play action is going to be most effective. But I think a key thing to note coming into the second half of the season that Jordan Love does seem to be much healthier. He was a full participant in all 3 practices coming into this Bears game. That hasn't been normal this season. And injuries, if you're on the football field, and Jordan Love talked about this, if you're on the football field, you have to go and perform at a high level. That's the name of the game, right? Even if you're dealing with an injury, if you're out there, you're expected to perform. So to what degree the various injuries that Love has had has impacted his play, we can't quantify that. We're never going to know. But you have to think it was a factor to some degree, and I think it's threefold. One, the practice time. Like I said, Love being a full participant in practice hasn't been the norm. He's missed time or he's been limited often. And again, that's a lot of practice reps, a lot of continuity within the offense that's been missing leading up into Sundays this season. Another component of it, LaFleur talked about it this week, Adam Stenavich, quarterback coach Tom Clements has talked about this previously. The power, the ability to drive the ball, your accuracy as a quarterback starts in your base, starts with your feet, starts with your legs, and obviously those are the knee, the groin, is injuries that Love has been working through. So again, we can't quantify this. We'll never know the exact answer or how much of an impact it was, but you have to think to some degree when you see some of those uncharacteristic off-target throws from Love, was the injuries that he was working through, was that a factor to some degree? Last component of it, and we already talked about it a little bit, but the ability to be under center, mobility at the quarterback position, and again, not just to extend plays, to go off script if there's pressure, but the ability to have that mobility off of the run action within LaFleur's offense is an important element. And again, that's been somewhat limited as well. Like I said, Packers' ability to go under center. So all those are different factors with Love, again, appearing to be much healthier than what he has been coming off the bye week that could provide this offense, again, as we search for the consistency, the stability, could provide that unit with a boost. Now back to the play action. Again, Love's injuries, inability to line up under center consistently has impacted how often they've utilized play action. In addition to that, again, penalties, right? If you're facing a 1st and 15 after a pre-snap penalty, a 2nd and 12, play action just not going to be nearly as effective because the defense isn't overly concerned about you running the ball in that situation, right? They're playing the passing game. When it comes to successful play action, again, the obvious is you have an effective run game that you can lean on, that when the linebackers, the safeties see that run action, all it takes is a split second of hesitation. All it takes is half a step forward, thinking a running play's coming for a window in the passing game to open up. Other key component of it, obviously the offensive line's ability to, one, sell the running play, sell that you're run blocking, but still maintain the pocket around Jordan Love to transition into that pass protection aspect of it. You're often going to see downfield routes off of play action too. One, because if the safety, for example, does freeze, does creep up a little bit thinking it's a run, you have a potential one-on-one, a potential mismatch downfield where you can take a shot, but it's also going to create better spacing underneath for checkdowns, and again, those underneath routes as well. So when we look at what the recipe is for successful play action, obviously you have Jordan Love, you have a good running game, you have an offensive line that ranks top 10 in the NFL in pass blocking efficiency according to Pro Football Focus, and then you have, again, a number of different pass catching options as well. So the recipe is certainly there for the Packers to be successful off of play action, and it's an important part of the Matt LaFleur offense. And we saw last season, Jordan Love's completion percentage off of play action was 72%, averaged almost 10 yards per pass attempt, had 12 touchdowns to only 2 interceptions. So they've been successful off this before. And again, as we look at, all right, how does this offense get back on track as a whole, or not back on track, but find consistency, I should say, as a whole, that's play action is going to be a key component to it. And again, the fact that they can utilize it more with Love being healthier, important. Minimizing penalties, so again, you can utilize it more. Love being healthy, hopefully improving some of the mechanics, the accuracy that we've seen during this first half of the season. Again, important for all the reasons I mentioned. The recipe's there for them to be successful in that regard. So I appreciate you tuning in. Hit like on the video, hit subscribe on the YouTube channel. You can follow me on Twitter at Paul_Brettel. You can find all my work over at ESPNlacrosse.com.